Hello everyone, I'm Transformers fan called 328 here, and it's time to tip the scales. Well, I tried. Cue intro! Fire Emblem Awakening, the game that single-handedly saved the franchise from death, breathed new life into Smash Bros., and is one of my all-time favorite games. The epic story, the addicting gameplay, the strong visuals, the incredible music, and best of all, the abundance of well-written characters. It's all great. Even if it's not treading new ground, it just does it all very well. The characters are so fascinating to watch as they deal with the story surrounding them and their growing relationships with the other characters you recruit throughout the adventure, and then some. It's even fun to raise them into super powerful warriors of destruction. There's a lot to talk about with these characters, both as playable units and as characters, so this one might last quite a bit longer than my prior list. The only stipulation to this list is the exclusion of the player character, since they're kind of a no-duh choice, considering that they're more of a link to the player like a Pokemon protagonist, even if they have input on things and such. And of course, loads of spoilers. If you want to play this game but haven't yet, do not watch this video. With that out of the way, here we go with my top 10 favorite Fire Emblem Awakening characters. A lot of RPGs have super bosses. Characters that exist solely to test the player's strength and level grinding to their absolute limits. And short of the paid DLC, Priam serves that role. While most Spot Pass paralogs feature characters from the main story to recruit, provided they overcome some other major obstacle, Priam's story is that he won't join the Shepherds unless they defeat him in combat. Him and his 49 powerful units. Up against you and your 29 should-be overpowered units. If you rush headfirst into this battle, you'll get wrecked. Hard. Just imagine beating this on Classic mode. That'd be a massacre. Beating him does pay off, as not only do you get a powerful unit, but a surprisingly interesting character. Like most Spot Pass units, he can only support with the player character, which sucks, but in them, he shows that when he gets on a topic involving his personal experiences, he'll ramble on about it like crazy. Kinda like me in this list. Speaking of similarities, Chrom notices the various soldiers under Priam's command upon beating him, showing that he is capable of uniting several different people under the same cause, much like Chrom did throughout the game. Very fitting for Ike's descendant. As a unit, he comes with 3 skills he otherwise cannot obtain, making him hit hard and difficult to defeat him without ranged weaponry. He can also reclass for some other great skills like counter. There's just one issue preventing him from getting any higher on the list. He's probably the very last unit you'll get, since you need to ensure your 30 or so units are powerful enough to handle him, so he'll be nearly useless in anything other than the DLC maps. First of all, this character is voiced by Mellow Lee, is a wise mentor figure of sorts, and doesn't have an affinity for tea. That's just so surreal to me. Second, she can turn into a dragon, which is so many levels of awesome that it's almost impossible to comprehend, even if it's not the best class in the game. She can reclass for a few better skills like Life Taker and Miracle, but that's about it, so she may not be your best unit. Third, she is an optional unit that can be recruited as soon as you kill Yanfei, so her utility is a little higher than Priam's, provided that a few Risen don't slip past you in the mission in question and kill her. Fourth, she is a character from prior Fire Emblem games, not one of which I have ever played. So why is she even on the list if I haven't even played any of the games she was featured in before? One simple, if admittedly petty, reason. She has my favorite love confession in the entire game.
I know that to love another, I must watch the world move past him. But such short years make an eternity worth living.
I'll let that speak for itself, especially since it sums up her character quite nicely. Actually, Tiki isn't the only character from a previous Fire Emblem game to be a recruitable unit this time around. And I'm not referring to the spot pass units from prior Fire Emblem games. What I'm referring to is a character that can be recruited as soon as Emran dies. How am I gonna segue out of that? The answer is I don't. I'm not smart nor witty enough to do so. So it's Anna. To be more precise, this is one of several Annas roaming across your list. They're all identical sisters who are all raised for various purposes. This one is mainly a merchant, but she can sure sell you a can of whoop-ass should you oppose her. Her entire character can be summed up as,
"We've got to have money."
At least she and her sisters are courteous towards their customers, and this leads into great hijinks in her supports. All two of them. As a unit, she can serve as a useful trickster, with her high luck and decent speed dodging just about everything Plegia and Early Vald throws at her, in addition to already being able to open doors and chests for free with an extra space of movement. She can gain a few other good skills like Life Taker and Pass, and has some decent magic to make use of Levin Swords and healing magic. And why does Celica A. Mercury remind me of her so much? Does Anna have sisters from across the multiverse or something? Actually, that wouldn't surprise me considering the Anna sisters run everything from traveling shops to the gates to DLC land. I hate it when a potential ally can be killed by you. There's 2 instances of that in this game, and both are worth recruiting. The first one is Gaius during Chapter 6. I killed him on my first 2 runs unknowingly, but recruited him in the 3rd run. The other is Tharja during Chapter 9. I killed her in my first run and specifically started out my 2nd run just to get her. She was worth it in so many ways. As a character, she isn't half bad. She is creepy with her unhealthy obsession with the player character regardless of gender, and more than once establishes herself as the token evil teammate of the Shepherds. But at least she's extremely loyal, does have shades of good in her, and can love someone else if she doesn't marry the player character. It's probably a good idea to do so, since her children benefit quite a lot from the marriage. She's quite the useful unit herself since she has access to dark magic, allowing her to use tomes like Waste, allowing her to strike twice, and Mire, allowing her to strike from quite the distance, allowing you to pick off annoying units with ease. With the ease of access for the prior Fire Emblem Spot Pass characters that sell tomes like this, gaining very few of those throughout the main adventure should be a non-issue for game breaking. She may not be very accurate with her dark magic, but she can at least reclass into a sniper and get a skill to improve it. The Morgan that results becomes quite the powerful spellcaster herself, and Noire gains just about every class Morgan gets, making her just as versatile. One could argue that this can apply to any character the player character marries that has a child other than Morgan, and that's true. Awakening, because of the customizable nature of the player character, makes the experience feel very personal. And since that's what I did on my 2nd run, the one I spent the most time on, that's why she's on the list. Not that I'd marry a woman like this in real life. I mean, it is just a video game. Also, how does the ESRB consider Tharja too sexy for the E10 Plus rating? Which she is, to be fair. Yet allow Zonda's crystal to pass censorship? And here's one of Tharja's most popular husband choices. Henry is one of the most surprisingly popular characters in the entire game, to the point where he even has a self-demonstrating article in TV tropes. And for good reason. It's hard not to be charmed by his sick obsessions with the macabre and bad puns. Despite his disturbed psyche, he's very protective of the Shepherds considering Crom's kindness, can be very friendly once you get past his madness, and is a good father, believe it or not. That surprised me as much as anyone, especially considering that his insanity makes Tharja's obsession almost seem like child's play. And it's much better to have him marry than to leave him single, because if he doesn't, it's implied that he just up and kills himself. Like Tharja, he's a dark mage, allowing him to use the same kinds of dark magic as she can, except with more accuracy, can handle more hits than her, and gets better as a sorcerer, balancing his stats at around 40 for all of them except strength, which is useless for a tome-focused class anyways. He can also get some good skills like Life Taker and Counter, and his good defense and magic growth actually make him a really good trickster, up there with the characters that specialize in that class. He's also got more associations with the number 13 than Organization 13. There are a good many reasons as to why I like Cordelia so much, but let's sum up her character as this. Long red hair, is a member of her series' military, has an unrequited infatuation with one of the main heroes, and is voiced by Julianne Taylor in the English localization. Sounds a lot like Tsubaki Yayoi, doesn't it? except she has massive survivor's guilt instead of loyalty issues, and her and Crom don't end up as canon. She even admits that it'll never happen in her conversation with Crom in the Summer Scramble DLC, so it's a good thing she's capable of finding love elsewhere. As a unit, she already earns points for being a Pegasus Rider, whose potential furthest promotion, Dark Flyer, grants her the coveted Gale Force ability, which allows a unit to move a second time if they defeated an enemy on their move. Also, she says she became a Pegasus Knight because she wasn't a very good runner, yet one of her class options is the Mercenary line, and she can be one of your best heroes possible. So can her daughter, who already gets a head start in the Mercenary class. I do take issue with Severa's recruitment requirement, but that's more Severa's fault than Cordelia's, so I can't blame her for what her future daughter does to the player. And at least Cordelia's story wasn't overrun by an unforeshadowed generic Doomsday villain. It was overrun by a heavily foreshadowed generic Doomsday villain. Seriously, you could probably make a drinking game out of how many times they reference the Fell Dragon. What makes it hard to talk about the child characters, at least as units, is how much of a variable they are. While their personalities never change throughout the playthroughs, there's just so much interchangeable with their stories, like who their father is, what classes they'll inherit, what stats they'll excel in, if they're even found, which actually makes some characters in situations like Lawrence all the worse, or if they even exist, considering that if the child's mother doesn't marry, their paralogue never opens up. Some kids could be almost useless, others can be a second Morgan with their extra versatility, especially if they're another player character's kid. In many respects, this makes just about every child unit applicable for this spot on the list. From Owain's overemphasis on the dramatic, to Inigo's flirtatious attitude, Cynthia's desire to be a hero, Jerome's Nightwing act, so on and so forth. Sometimes it boils down to personal preference and how your story unfolded. And if you've been paying attention, that's why Noire is on this spot on the list. She's actually one of the easiest children to get in a recruitment paralogue, since she automatically joins on turn 2, as opposed to having her mother or Crom speak with her first. While she starts off as an archer, which is admittedly one of my least favorite classes in the game due to personal preference, even if it does have its merits, she can easily reclass into other really good classes even without having the player character as her father. One of which, the Dark Mage line, is somewhat at odds with what's presented as her backstory. Noire was constantly used as a guinea pig for Tharja's experimental curses, and while she did have her father to make her stop it sometimes, she developed a shy, timid personality because of the experimentation, which led to that Tharja creating a talisman that would sometimes make her, let's say, violent and hammy.
Blood and thunder!
When Noire's father died, her Tharja snapped and focused solely on revenge, but even this future Tharja was not without her moments of kindness, and she specifically avoided teaching Noire how to cast curses despite her vast potential, since she knows how dangerous it can be to handle them, which makes her ability to reclass into the Dark Mage line reasonable and baffling, and this Tharja even sacrificed herself to protect Noire. Basically, Noire is like Blitzwing with a Fluttershy setting.
God, and they say I'm the crazy one!
I will concede that one of my favorite character archetypes is the Noble Demon, when a villain character is at least willing to play fair and is ultimately looking for a good battle among other things. As a Transformers fan, this is a trait found in at least one Decepticon since the Beast Wars days, and that's why I like Walhart so much. This man forged an empire, can dismantle potential turncoats in glorious fashion, and even commands a horde of powerful Risen in the chapter where you recruit him. The man is violent and harsh, and is not one to change his ways, but he is not without morals, as he forged his empire to strike back against Grima, even if it did backfire, and even he can tell when he's met his match and respects those whom he considers equal to him, which is how you recruit him to begin with. He has an epic boss theme, and is quite powerful as a unit. He starts at level 30 and has really high stats, a skill that negates his weapon weaknesses, and can move around the map with similar flexibility to a Flyer class unit in literally a class of his own. He can even reclass for a few great skills for him to pick up, like Pavis and Dual Guard Plus. But I do wonder who the next Conqueror antagonist would be. Toys R Us? Aldi? Weiss? At least it has to sound like a supermarket chain. And now for the other Smash Bros. Related reason why I even got this game to begin with. Yeah, she's quite the predictable choice, but hear me out. She's a victim of unfortunate circumstances, hailing from a future demolished by the return of the Fell Dragon, trying only to intervene when fate would bring the timeline towards the path hers went, yet failing in completely preventing things like Emran's death, and she still soldiers on, not once losing her hope in turning this timeline around. Given her state, she's not one for humor, and takes just about everything she's shown seriously. Brady, do your damn research! She does have her fair share of emotional scenes, so she's not entirely stoic, and despite her straight-faced perception of the world, she still ends up in a fair amount of humorous situations, especially with her sibling, and she'll always have one given Crom's limited suitors, unless he's an asocial jerkass. Speaking of, she's the easiest unit to make game-breaking. Why? She's really powerful from the get-go since she has a powerful weapon that will never break, and all of Crom's suitors, save Sully and the random village girl Crom marries if he's been asocial the whole time, grant her the Pegasus Rider line, giving her access to the insanely useful Gale Force ability. In tandem with moving her class around with Master Seals and Second Seals, she'll likely hit her caps with quite a few useful abilities at her disposal. She's also the only child unit forced upon you, automatically joining halfway through, so you'll always have a strong unit on your side. To be fair, her mark disguise wasn't exactly the best.
Honestly, I'm surprised you didn't figure it out until just now.
I mean, I didn't even hide my voice or anything. Note to self, never mimic a woman's voice ever again for the love of God. Now for the obligatory recap. Number 10, the Radiant Hero. Number 9, the Divine Voice. Number 8, the Secret Seller. Number 7, the Grim Stalker. Number 6, the Twisted Mind. Number 5, the Knight Paragon. Number 4, Ms. Personality. Number 3, the Conqueror. And number 2, the Foreseer. Screw the build-up, it's Gangrel. What's with wrestling constantly interfering with my videos? Whatever. It's the Mad King. Oh, come on! This guy! And allow me to explain why. He first shows up in Chapter 5 to negotiate with Emran by trading Maribel for the Fire Emblem, which doesn't work in his favor thanks to Emran's pacifism, the sheer stupidity of the deal, and Rickon stepping in. At this point, it's been made clear that he and the kingdom he rules, Plegia, is looking for a war because of the cruelty Yllis brought during a crusade against them sometime prior to Awakening, and Gangrel does very little to make him seem like the good guy. He's shown to be enraptured by the bloodshed he instigated in several instances, most notably when he basks in Crom's despair upon witnessing Emran's sacrifice. If you remember when I bitched about Izanami, my enjoyment of Hazama might have made this part a no-brainer for me. But that's not even the reason why he's on here, let alone at the top, because it's at Emran's death that things become quite interesting. The following chapter is all about the conflict Gangrel's men have about continuing the war he tried to start thanks to M's final words, yet they continue to fight in fear of what Gangrel would do to their families. This shows how war can be hell for both ends of the conflict, that there really is no victimless side in a pointless struggle like this. Something I see very rarely in video game storytelling. This is further shown in the next chapter, where only the most loyal of his men even stayed. Were this to be his final curtain call, he would still not be on the list. Instead, we learn in the first Spot Pass paralogue, very fittingly titled The Dead King's Lament, that he survived his fatal wounds, only to be dragged around by a gang of pirates, being put in the most ironic situation he could be in, being treated like a waste of breath, much like how he treated his men. If Crom can speak with him 3 times without killing him or dying himself, Gangrel joins the group and shows just how much his actions weighed on him. In his support conversations with the male avatar, he fully admits that he went too far. He tried to unite everyone in an attempt to strike back against Walhart and his forces, but he became too invested in the violence and led his kingdom to ruin because of it. It's clear at this point that the war and its casualties weighed greatly on him, and while he wants to change his ways and does get more upbeat by the end of his supports, he knows his actions crossed a line very few would consider, and there's no changing that. Perhaps the greatest display of this is his discussions with Emran in the Hot Springs Scrambled DLC, where he confesses his remorse to the amnesic M, and even begins breaking down in front of her because of what he's become. Seeing M comfort him is ironic, yet heartwarming, and well-deserved if you ask me. It takes a lot of guts to admit to your errors, and even more to realize that your past sins can't just be washed away with time, no matter how much you want to be redeemed, especially if they crossed more than a few moral standards. It's what makes him more human than most video game villains. And with that, one would think that he'd get his redemption, or at least live a better life in the end. Not unless he marries the female avatar, which is rather slim unless he boards it. If he doesn't, his ultimate fate is an insignificant death not too long after Grima's defeat. A man who wanted to prevent violence and bloodshed ends up living and dying miserably because he caused a good amount of that violence and bloodshed. At least Walhart went on to conquer DLC land, Aversa went back to her old life, and the other major villains died noteworthy deaths. Gangrel's story is almost that of a great Shakespearean tragedy. It's a character path that I rarely see, and that's why he's at the top of my list. Wait, I got so wrapped up in talking about his character that I completely forgot to talk about him as a unit. He's awesome! He might not be able to take a hit, nor is he very lucky, but he can be quite versatile in being mobile, offensive, and supportive. It helps that he starts out really strong and can reclass to easily gain even better skills, making him a very useful unit for the DLC and later Spot Pass chapters. I'm Transformers Fanco 328, and now that someone's misery ironically brought me great joy, it's time to bring you the review and wipe away my debt.
And quite the actress, too. Honestly, I'm surprised you didn't figure it out until just now.
Should spend more time matching your voice up to your lips.